TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark savage.
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark savage stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, TruthSeekah. We're back with another exciting episode of the TruthSeekah podcast. Looking forward to this discussion today. It's been a while since we did an interview about UFOs and aliens and aerial phenomena, and really a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and we don't do it enough. So looking forward to getting into some of this discussion and dialogue today. Got a very interesting guest. Before I go any further, got to say a huge thank you to everybody who's supporting on Patreon, everybody who's supporting my work and music over at patreon.com/TruthSeekah. You guys are near and dear to my heart, and I appreciate each and every one of you. You guys allow me to do what I'm doing full time. And if you want to support, head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah and unlock rewards and perks at different levels. There's exclusive merch. You get my entire discography to download and unreleased music, all available. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Thank you guys so much. You guys really mean the world to me and my family. You guys rock. So without further ado, I'm going to bring my guest on, Chad Meeks. What's going on, my friend?
Derek, I guess it's Buenos Tardes in Mexico. Good afternoon here. I guess it's 10 o'clock on the coast, and you are over around 12 o'clock. But anyway, happy to be here, Derek.
12 o'clock noon. Judging by the title of your book and upcoming film, Giant Rock, the greatest UFO story never told. The audacity, the greatest UFO story that no one's heard, never told. What's up with the title, man?
Oh, man. You know, actually, it was an actor friend of mine at the time that says, hey, man, this is the greatest UFO story that's never been told. And I said, well, let's stick it on the book cover and let's stick it on the movie. And we'll call that, the subtitle, Giant Rock, the greatest UFO story never told. But in essence, Giant Rock, which is a 9-story displaced boulder out in the middle of the desert, were actually carved out where my aunt, uncle, distant relatives, me, all used to live out in the middle of nowhere, about 42 miles outside of Palm Springs. And but it's a giant rock. And every year there was anywhere from 5,000 to 12,000 people that all came out there, all people who had experienced UFO abduction, had sightings, you name it. They all came out there and congregated at a place called Giant Rock. And during the 50s and the 60s and in the 70s, it was the definitive meeting place for all UFO contactees. So, and a lot of strange and weird things happened. Some of the people that were involved out there were people like Howard Hughes, which was a friend of my uncle, which, you know, the aviator. He actually put money up for some of my uncle's research on time travel, and a lot of interesting people, a whole colossal amount of things. And, you know, as time went on, you know, and as I got older, I lived out there and I experienced all this stuff. And I'm thinking, and I was talking to all the old timers, which were dying off one by one. I said, hey, I better get this in print, and even better, want to get it on film. Yeah.
So with having all these people show up to essentially where you guys were living, right? So these people were just around every day. Just
we were living there. Yeah. We were living out there.
Awesome and awkward at the same time. Because I think in the field, because I get a flood of inboxes and messages from people. Some of them are hard to put together. They're hard to make sense of what these people are trying to say sometimes. Where there are just a lot of people who were just there because it's a place for people with weird experiences to be accepted, or what type of people were hanging around?
It was a safe place, and actually it ran the gamut from celebrities to normal people, but everyone felt safe. And actually, one of the things that my uncle did, George Van Tassel, which he probably was the number one UFO disclosure mover and shaker during that time period. Airline pilots and military pilots, I'd be out there in the middle of, we're out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's tumbleweeds and I mean, there's nothing out there. Well, I see military planes and helicopters out at my uncle's restaurant, all sitting around. Back at the time, everyone smoked cigarettes and drank coffee and sitting around tables talking. And I didn't figure out what they were, I didn't know what they were doing there. But I guess what he was there is a safe place, because my uncle, he had such a huge volume of information and was an experiencer and a channeler himself, that he actually explained to them their experiences so they could actually deal in the real world. Because I don't know if you remember at that time, if you were to report that you had actually seen a sighting or experience, you were out of a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they had no one to talk to. So he really was a really kind of a UFO humanitarian too, as far as helping all those folks.
That's interesting you say that. Kind of like this podcast has kind of been like a beacon as well, to kind of be a place where you can talk about these encounters and instances. Because when I was first having my UFO encounters, I didn't really have many people to talk to. My friends thought I was crazy. I come from the religious right, so anything that's out there that's not mentioned of per name in the Bible is demonic, right? So I'm going around to my church friends and stuff, talking about seeing UFOs and having encounters like this, right? So I basically reached out to a whole bunch of different people who had their own radio shows. I know James Gilliland at the East City Ranch. I reached out to him and some of his people, and calling into radio shows just to try to make sense about what's going on. So when people are having these encounters and they have no idea how to explain it, if they're going crazy or what, a place of solitude is needed, whether it's a physical place that you guys had, or a place like this, like a podcast, where people to come on and share their stories, just to know at the very minimum that they're not going crazy and they're not losing their mind.
Exactly. In fact, I appreciate that, because our family was split. My mother was coming from this very Judaic Christian. In fact, you'll love when you get in the book, you're gonna identify with the character I called Chase, because Chase and his encounter with Pastor Jack, which Chase is me, and I was trying to explain to Pastor Jack what all this was going on. And he basically held up the Bible and told me the same thing. He read me the riot act. He says, there are no such things as UFOs. There's only demons. Yeah. And you're possessed. And I'm sitting there going, and so that kind of shut me down. Now, my uncle, people always say, well, why don't you go to him? I thought he was causing all this stuff. And he was the last person I wanted to talk to. I lived near him because I didn't know what was going on. And so, it was, for me, it was, a pretty traumatic thing, and then not to be able to talk to it with family or anybody, it makes your head want to implode. It's tough. Yeah, it really is. It's
deep, man. Because I don't know why, but as you're talking about this, I really feel like people it almost has the same sense of, and I hate to equate it to this, but like someone who's been molested or someone who's been touched or something, like they're ashamed to talk about it. They don't want to come out in the open. You can't just go to anybody and say, hey, did you know that this happened to me? You're kind of ashamed. And so a lot of people keep that stuff, you know what I'm saying, within them. And then they hear about stories like yours or mine or whatever. And then it creates this safe haven. And I think kind of the link back to the whole molestation thing is like what we're seeing now with celebrities coming forth saying, yeah, I was molested, I was touched or whatever. And not everybody's coming forth. Not everybody's doing it. Almost like what the whole deal with the UFO phenomenon. Now celebrities are coming out. I've had a UFO encounter. I've seen a ship. And it creates this safe space where it's okay to talk about this stuff. And I think it's really important, man.
It is. Well, also, too, when you talk about, there's other things called like psychic molestation, too, where literally your chakras are completely blown out. And literally, you don't know what's, you don't know what end is up. But here's an example. I mean, your whole perception changes once you have that. You're changed for life indelibly. Like, for instance, I remember I had a balloon and I was with some family members and the balloon got away from me. And they go, why aren't you crying, little boy? And I said, listen, my father, he's going to come up, he's going to fly up there and grab that balloon. I actually believe that. I said, people, and I tell them, I was looking at a group of people can fly. And yet they kind of snickered and they're all kind of laughing at me. They just didn't understand that I knew that people could fly. Mm-hmm. Now, they didn't know, but that's just a prime example as far as your perception, as far as a little kid. It's completely different. Yep. It is.
It's awarded to each person a measure of faith, and so you're basically limited to your perception. And so when you're talking about flying, I mean, that's something that's very interesting. We see a lot of the religious art from the popes flying around town, like in their art throughout the centuries. And that was something that was reportedly the popes used to do, used to go out into the town squares and levitate and fly around. And I know it was so common that they ended up making a movie about it called The Flying Nun, a woman whose faith was so extraordinary that she couldn't even stay seated on the ground. They had to like tie her to a chair and nail it to the ground because she kept flying away because of her faith. And she believed it was possible. And to them that believe, all things are possible, right?
Absolutely. Sally Field, I remember the show, as far as that. No, and actually it's a good point you bring up, because that, if anything I got from all that stuff, which instantly was traumatic for me because it set me apart, and literally the science of actually starting to find out that your DNA changes once you've encountered an extraterrestrial, your actual DNA, and they call it the psychic antenna that you get. Mm-hmm. So you actually know when things are going to be happening and all that stuff. And people wonder, well, how do you know? Well, another little story I had is that there was a big jelly bean contest. There's a whole trash can full of jelly beans that I was at this wreck thing around 11 years old, and you had to guess the amount or come closest to the amount of jelly beans, and and a number just came in my head of this, and it just came in my head, and it was to the letter. And then there was a big meeting because no one could understand how I knew the exact number. They thought that one of the people had given me the number. So it brings all kinds of interesting things and challenges to you, because people don't know how or why you know. And it's like, and then you don't even know. And then you question yourself. So it runs a whole gamut. So I'm very empathetic with, people who have actually had contacts. I've done, a lot of counseling over the years as far as with them, just to basically chat with them, talk with them, walk them through, let them know that they're okay. And the bottom line is that they have a right to basically tell somebody else about their experience without any kind of dispersion. So. Yeah.
And that right there, because I've done some sessions as well, whether it's people who have like childhood trauma, wounds like that, or who have had extraterrestrial encounters as well. And I think the majority of just simply doing a session or something like that, or trying to bring healing or understanding, is just being there for them to talk to. Like
Yes.
the majority of the sessions is just listening and having a safe place where, hey, it's okay to talk about this stuff.
Well, it's kind of like plutonium. I mean, you're really carrying around a lot of the information, of the ages, and the information is of a different dimension. Even though, we live in a 3D world, and where it's all about the buck and this and this and this, and then you have this completely other abstraction of the whole UFO phenomenon. And it's like carrying plutonium or uranium inside of you. It's like, it just has to get out and you have to express it. I think a lot of people have had all kinds of very difficult psychological problems by not revealing to other people about this. Now, Dr. John Mack, he was a Harvard psychiatrist, and he did a lot of work with this. And he never, ever wanted to go into the whole, contactee UFO. He was out of Harvard. He was a psychiatrist, award-winning psychiatrist. Anyway, so he figured, as far as on the abduction side, that it was anywhere from up to between the years 1955 and 65 that there were over 2 million people abducted here. So the numbers are staggering, and actually his numbers are, I think, they're conservative as far as what the actual contact that people are having with both benevolent ETs and the more sinister or demonic type aliens. Yeah.
There's like a bunch of places that we can go, especially with that statement. But I want to go back to the beginning, man. Talk a little bit about some of the first encounters that you've had with the other realms, like as a child.
Well, actually, it's I come from a Judeo-Christian background and all that so I was the first one. This is where it all opened up. Is I literally stood on top of the my grandmother's old trailer, and I was just 4 years old, asking about, just starting to find out about God, which is pretty advanced for the years. And I lifted up my hands, and I put a prayer, and I said, hey, if there's a God, then please call my name. And I mean, within that second, I had this blasting going in my ears. It was like sounding like trumpets, and calling my name. So yeah, tell that to a psychiatrist. Anyways, so what did I do? I was on top of this old Airstream trailer, and my grandmother had a bunch of scraps and boxes. I flew off that little Airstream trailer onto there, and I ran into the house, and I hid underneath my grandmother's bed. So that was my first experience, and then from there, it was boom, boom, boom. And shortly thereafter, I had an abduction experience. I was teleported through a glass window in the same room with two of my brothers. I was brought in. They were the the short grays. They stood around me, and they were communicating with me telepathically and doing their instrumentation and investigation, telling me not to worry, that I would never remember this, and that they had a job to do, and that I needed to relax and be calm. Which, again, big request. Number one, I never forgot it. The experience. I remembered I woke up with a severe high temperature, and I also stuttered profusely. I couldn't keep, and it lasted for about 6 months. I couldn't speak, so it had rattled my world. And and then that was the first, and that the abductions kept on occurring until I was about 10 years old, primarily out in the desert, and then actually even in the city. Where you'd have lapse time, where people would literally come up missing, missing and what have you. So that was a whole history of it. Towards the end, I stopped letting them. I refused to be abducted. In fact, I was on a swing set one time, and telepathically, it was a gray day. I couldn't see the ship, and they kept on saying, "Yeah, come with us, come with us." And I go, "No, I'm not coming this time." And so they started to pull my swing all the way up, and so my feet were actually flying in the air, and my hands literally got blood hanging on. And I said, I'm not going. And then it came right back down. And that was the last time I was ever physically abducted.
Oh, wow.
So that was it. So I did refuse. But before that, I'd have missing time. This also, too, ran in parallel with my cousins and brothers and sisters. There was a whole cluster of these kind of abductions. Some were more mischievous than others. But for the most part, no one died. My cousins, psychologically, they ended up. I had one cousin, he actually ended up killing himself because he couldn't handle all the sensations and all this stuff. He was just one gigantic vortex of the stuff, and he eventually just couldn't handle it anymore. So he left the earth. So I was really sad. That was my uncle's. Grandson, Sean. And so, but yeah, but his went on. His never stopped. So yeah, his abductions never stopped. So yeah.
You talked about being a young man, praying, talking to God, and say, "If you're real, show me that you're real." You hear a voice in your inner ear, scares the mess out of you. I think there's a connection there, because I have, similar story of trying to find out if God is real. And if for some reason these ET beings are kind of connected. There's spaceships, there's ships that are in the night sky, that are in the day sky, that communicate with you telepathically, that sound just like you were describing that voice that you heard as a kid when you're looking up to the sky praying.
Absolutely. In fact, my uncle has a description, which it's funny. I go to some of his books. He was a very prolific writer, and he was explaining that that some of the aliens, or group aliens, they use a thing called an ediphone, and that when they watch us from a very long distance, they can see our every move, and at times they basically will send an omni being with a message inside of your head, and that's how but when you're young and what have you, you don't know everything's pretty simple. There's God, Jesus, et cetera, et cetera. You just think everything's coming from God, but it could have, it was in fact a message that, these beings, basically embrace that. So that's what started it. And that's what starts this whole physical transformation as far as that. Whenever you have communication with the super sensible world, it changes you. It changes your DNA. So that's kind of what happened. And no matter how far I'd want to run away or hide from any of this stuff. That's the other thing too, is that you may you can run, but you can't hide. And I used to sit. My uncle was on the television. I used to sit with my buddies, and this is back in the when I kind of got a little bit older, 16, 17 years old. My uncle would come on TV and talk about all this stuff on Discovery Sunday or whatever, and amidst the partying and festivity, everyone would go, "Oh wow, this is the coolest thing I ever heard in my life," and I just sat there, mute. I did not want to go into it at all with them. So it's kind of because I was so caught up in trying to be normal, So it was, but normal normal wasn't for me, no matter how hard. But also too in my career. Listen, I ran oil and gas companies. I've done investment banking. I've been on the financial world and all that stuff. But it wasn't until I got older and a little bit more relaxed subject matter. And now I don't have to hide any of this. I can basically be direct, and kind of let all this stuff go. And I did so with both a book and a screenplay. So yeah.
Talking about the different good and bad aliens, or good and bad ETs, or angels and demons, whatever we want to categorize them as. Back in the 80s for me, but even before, you heard all of these, I guess the 90s too, the abduction stories where people were taken aboard ships and done all this work to, and experimented on and cut open and had stuff put in their bodies, and a very horrific, terrifying experience, right? Listening to the majority of what I consider ET contact cases now, we don't really hear the term abduction anymore. Like, people were taken against their will. It's almost like there's a longing within people to touch the divine, or to know that something out there that's godlike or greater than themselves exists. And so whenever people are having contact now, they're calling themselves contactees versus I was taken against my will and things like that. And I know some people, we mentioned James Gilliland talks about that a lot of these bad ETs or the bad grays are kind of phasing out. What do you feel as far as the difference between where we started with the abduction scenarios to where we are today?
Well, there's two schools of thought, and I don't know definitively. I just have an opinion. I think our government was involved in a lot of this stuff too, and I think that the Greys might have been a creation of that for them gathering additional data and such, and that might have been a deal that Eisenhower made, with the Grays for technology transfer. So I think that was the given, and so it subsided. Now, along with that, there is protective, like the Nordics and some of the other. They're protective, and they're the watchers, and they basically watch over and not allow us to get completely hammered. So I did sense that. That feeling of that goodness or divinity that was around me protecting me.
Yeah.
But I did feel it. But at the same time, what I was seeing, and it was just so surreal and made no sense at all comparatively to my, to my regular world. Is just really it's a phenomenon that it's so hard to describe. I've also had some very, very extraordinary experiences. One I was brought, and I believe that they were with a divine entity. They showed me. They showed me how everything works. As far as that, they brought me to this colorful molecular wall, and I was very, very depressed at 12 and 13 years old, and I was contemplating killing myself too. But I was whisked off to this place and shown and said, hey, and they showed me a bright light. And he says, well, and it was way down low. And he says, this is where you're at now. He says, he says, and then they showed me a light which was higher and a more, the lights were radiant. He says, and this is where you need to go before you leave the earth. Okay. This is where you need to be. And he says, and I was told, don't ever think about taking your life ever, because this is what your destiny is. So do not get in the way with this. So yeah, from that part, the strength. Granted, I had some bad ones, but I also had some really good ones. I also had spontaneous healings. Yeah. Too. So I've had, one time for some reason I was attacked, and I had almost 2-inch boils all over my body, and I literally had the messengers tell me to basically just get in a warm bath, turn off the light, and count backwards and breathe. And so I did it, and then I had this out-of-body experience that went up, and I went through and I saw all the panoramic universes and all the multiverses, civilizations brought through the whole thing. And then I kept on going through the various wormholes, and then I was asked, I said, okay, now you've gone too far. You have to turn back now, or you're going to come up here. And I said, no, I need to go back with my wife and my children. And I was brought back immediately. Well, one of the things that happened was there was no evidence of the boils. And I had a whole bunch of them. They were all gone. And I was completely cured of it. But the experience is like indelible in my brain, as far as what it is out there in the universe. And there's countless universes. So, yeah.
Talking about that the Greys may have been working with the government, or that the Greys may be, some people say, these type of suits or robots. You hear all kind of stuff about these theories. When we're talking about the early abduction phenomenon, there's a lot of people who, like you say, believe it's that the government have something to do with it, because they wake up on a ship or in some weird room and they look around and there's these gray alien-like beings that are operating on them, messing with them, poking them, prodding them, things like that. And they look over in the corner and there's a man dressed in military garb. And so there's something called the MILAB abductions, military-induced abductions, where for me, I definitely think it's used to cause fear and hysteria in the community with as far as abductions. Therefore, if you see a UFO, if you see a bright light in the night sky, you won't try to signal it, you won't try to make contact with it, because people are doing that now. People are making contact with these ships and these beings that are out there. And there's a fear and hysteria there, especially with the movies and stuff like that came out in that time. So talk a little bit about the MILAB stuff. Do you have any more info, or have you ever seen anybody who was a part of the government on these craft and things like that?
Well, I personally have not, but I will interject something. Back even during World War II, the Foo Fighters were over the over the channel, and it was scaring Churchill out of his mind, because all these airplane pilots would come back and explain what they were seeing. They were seeing, ships that were, right outside their window, and actually going inside their planes, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, some of the phenomenon was just going on, and so it was very confusing. So he actually had talked extensively with Roosevelt and then later Truman about, hey, what if everyone knows that we're not alone here? Then people will stop going to church, and they'll stop paying taxes, and they'll stop supporting the government. And that's the biggest fear, because really, I think if people knew their connection to this outer super sensible world, I think the whole narrative would change in our lives. I think that the psychopaths that are running this world, and I think they're kind of either walk-ins or bred-ins or whatever. It makes no sense with all the just evil that's going on when there's so much that we have and that we could easily share, and everyone would be happy. Instead, we live in a world where 0.1% control everything, and all this. And all these people are occupied with various gadgets and various stuff, and they don't get the real heart of stuff, which is our connection and our legacy. And this is the most important thing about it. This is our legacy. These are like family members. We are connected to this whole multiverse, and it's not synthetic. It's not. They're trying to introduce AI, technology, et cetera, which I think are a remnant of the Greys. There's just something off, including the other step was the Men in Black, which, I saw, you see the cartoon, movies and shows, which are, led to distract you. And as I'm watching that, I had a neurosurgeon whose dad worked with my uncle on time travel, and he had actually witnessed the Men in Black. Now, this guy, very, very, very renowned neurosurgeon contactee was talking to him, and the Men in Black came to his house and told his father, who was a scientist, who was a physicist, to stop working with George Van Tassel, or that they'd come back and kill the entire family. Well, that's kind of real stuff that I have been accustomed to, and they say the Men in Black are also military agents also. So again, this is all conjecture, and we're getting more and more stuff. But, I just know, when I talk to people and based on my own experiences and things like that, when I hear something about, the labs and, all that stuff, it adds credibility to it. So,
definitely. Whenever you first came out talking about this stuff, I think kind of how we talked about a while ago, how people are freaked out, they don't have nobody to talk to, things like that. You kind of come from a place where it was okay to talk about this stuff, and it was welcomed and even applauded, I guess, with your uncle, right? People are like, he's almost like a celebrity. So whenever you started talking about it, did you get any backlash? Were you embraced? Were you trying to piggyback off of his legacy? What type of feedback did you get on the early days of just talking about this stuff?
Well, I've been talking to the old timers, and of course, for a long, long time, and I don't even know. In fact, I've had a lot of very weird experiences. I had a group out of San Diego, and I was living in Utah at the time. Called me up, says, "Listen, we want to start your uncle's ministry and get this thing going." So they flew me out to San Diego and wanted me to restart that whole thing. And at the time, I was running mining companies, and I was in the material world. And I said, "Hey, you got the wrong guy." I said, "Hey, let me give you some money. Let me do something." I said, "I don't want to be that guy, as far as that." So I've kind of had a connection, but I just kind of, when I came out, everyone started warning me. Says, "Aren't you afraid?"
Yeah.
And I go, listen, I'm a little bit older. My kids are raised. I said, it's the time to be me, and the time to basically speak my truth.
Yeah.
And and I'm going to do everything I can vis-a-vis books, movies, whatever. As far as that, and I was a direct witness out there. At Giant Rock, I lived out there, and I experienced all this stuff firsthand. And I'm probably the only one in the whole entire family that has taken a public profile. And I thought about that too. A couple of things. Why me? And then you get into, well, why not me? And I kind of feel it's kind of my job to share my experiences and the experiences of others, to basically make people feel that they're not so odd, and make people feel comfortable. And that's the biggest purpose. Now, also too, even when I was writing the book, and which was a great experience, I was writing the book down. I had this amazing just epiphany, and I says, this is by far more than a book or a movie. This is so much more important, and so just go with it wherever this takes you. And that's kind of what I'm doing. So yeah, there it is.
Did you feel a sense of guidance while writing the book and getting those stories out and reliving them? Like, we want you to tell this.
Oh yeah, no, Derek, yeah, absolutely. That was so. I mean, literally, Now at first, here's my cowardly strategy. I'm just going to write a book about my uncle Frank Kreitzer, all the big timers, et cetera. And I got down there and I was writing like, 1 or 2 words. I mean, it was like I had bricks on my hand as far as that. And I had this, my uncle, he sends stuff to him and he says, hey, he says, you write this story however you want. He says, as far as that, is make it interesting, make it colorful. People can go on the internet and figure out what they want to figure out about this. They're all going to have different meanings, but you just write it the way you want it. And I mean, dude, the thing was just, it was like lightning. It was like, so then I said, but then I got to say, okay, there's something missing here. And that's when I introduced a character named Chase in there. The story was me. What was missing in the story was me, because I'm an extension of that legacy. Mm-hmm. And also too, there's other parts, like I have an assistant producer that I've worked with, him and 6 of their friends, they had an abduction experience out there in 2003. So I had to get that in there too. So, so kind of make it all contemporary. It's either a trilogy or probably a 2-season Netflix, equivalent, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, so. Definitely, bro. So in the end of everything, I say the end because I know your story's still unfolding now, and it's still, as long as you're an open conduit and you've already put the book out and you're working on the movie, like, there's definitely more to come, especially when you're open to receive and they've been working with you. But at this point though, looking back at everything, was it a good experience or was it bad as far as the abductions and the contact? I know it's kind of a mixed experiences. Would you welcome it? Was it good or is it bad? Would you not wish this on anyone, or what? I mean, what's the
bottom line?
The feeling when you look back. What's the feeling?
Right. All the above. Actually, it's all the above. I've kind of worked with all that stuff, but yeah. But today, first of all, if I wouldn't be me. I wouldn't be who I am. Mm-hmm. And I happen to like me, as far as that. And I've survived a lot of stuff, as far as that sort of thing. And those experiences made me stronger. Granted, it was a really a difficult situation on a lot of things, but they made me stronger. It made me a better person. They advanced my intellect. The stuff the gifts I got along with it. It's like everything. There's this good, there's good and bad with that whole thing. And, like in information and knowledge, unless you can adapt to it and make use of it, it can be dangerous, as far as that. But fortunately, I've kind of had a guiding hand from the people that have passed on, and there's a whole group of people, and they're in the thousands that want to see this thing done, and they're still pushing, to get it done. And there are also forces out there pushing this not to get done too. Incidentally, it's not. I mean, there's you can tell. I mean, there is a whole thing. People are scared of this information, just like they're scared of everyone's individual stories. People don't want to hear this, but they're going to hear it, and it's growing and growing. In fact, the amazing thing about it is when I started this thing, which is really, I copyrighted the book in 2012. When I started to write it, 2012. I mean, there was all this explosion of all of this, ancient aliens, all this stuff. Yeah. So I guess it was the right time for me to come out. It's kind of like, I also kind of equate it to kind of like being gay or that thing. You kind of come out of the closet. Here I am.
Yeah, definitely. Those early years, whenever you first started talking about it, did you? I mean, I know you said you was accepted, you was embraced, but you felt like you were led by that higher power. Would you equate it to the same thing as the God voice early on, or do you have to discern the two voices and kind of kind of figure out what's trying to contact you, what kind of voices are speaking to you in your inner ear. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I do. It's like, who's there? Who's saying this? And you're always, hey, listen, I always am questioning I'm always questioning myself. So, well, where am I getting that from, et cetera, et cetera. But what I've done is, over the years, I've kind of, I won't say anything in the terms of mastering it, but what I've done is I've accepted it. And so I said, okay, listen. And one thing I've become in my life is a good listener, and so I think that's part of the whole thing, where I listen to what's being told here. Now, I also too, I've also had when you get off the 3D world or the little mice trap, like for instance, I started a renewable energy college in the Midwest, and this was and eventually spent a lot of money. Became it was an economic failure, but I had that whole thing unfolded to me, and as far as what it is, it's just, it may not be a success, but it doesn't matter. It says you need to be doing this, you need to be learning about all this other stuff. So it was a wealth of information, and I knew, I said, okay, I knew I'm kind of out there, but I did it anyways. Yeah. So and that's because I was listening to the Spirit. I was listening to whatever that was versus Jesus. I mean, how much cash am I going to make on this thing? Yeah. And eventually I get bought out. I eventually got bought out by these Mossback people out there. That as far as that, but and it turned out okay. But again, I was asking, well, why should I be doing this if I'm not going to make a pile of money? And this is don't think about that. Just do what you need, do what we're telling you. And so I did. So yeah, anyways, but yeah, and it was for me. It was for me to get a background in renewables, and I ran into a lot of interesting people. So it was part of my progression, so that's what you deal with, So.
Whenever you're talking about having the spiritual gifts and psychic abilities and things like that increase with contact, which there's so much to go into on that. But I guess one of them that comes along that kind of fits in what we're talking about is the gift of discernment, to kind of be able to discern when something's about to happen. If something's good or bad, you can discern it. You get a feeling off of a voice or a vibration, or even a group of people. To walk into a group of people, be able to tell the intentions and things like that. So I think discernment is key, and it's a spiritual ability that we have to hone in and use and develop. But with that being said, with the discernment, and I know you don't want to really call any names, and I wouldn't expect you to, especially because you're trying to, make connections and you have a product that you need to market and things like that. But in the UFO community, is there people that you listen to their story, even some of the big names out there, when you hear them tell their story, you just kind of pick up on something like, they're not telling all the truth. They're kind of making it up as they go. There's some people, who you pick up on and their names kind of push a red button for many people in ufology. Do you pick up on any of that at all?
I do. And I've got a real problem with a lot of the, I guess they're
experts,
messiahs, whatever, and it seems like they want to elevate themselves and kind of lower everyone else. And I was asked to do a panel with a guy who's done some movies, and I'm not going to mention any names, and another guy that's on a lecture circuit and all that. And the producer out of Hollywood says, well, that'll help your book. And I said, I just don't trust those guys. Yeah. I said, I don't want my message to get, because my message is from the heart, and it's just what it is, and et cetera, et cetera. But I do have this sense about some of these, it's somewhat exploitive, and I don't know what their motive is. It just doesn't feel right. So I kind of fade them and shy away from that stuff, and essentially just do my own thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a bunch of those people out there, but see, I think they're in any niche, any arena where you get people in there and they kind of learn how to do it. They kind of learn the keywords. They what pops, what is almost clickbait as well. There's a lot of that right now. Whatever's hot at the time, they've got something to say on it.
Well, actually, my uncle, most of the techniques, especially the channeling and things like that, my uncle, it was him and Frank Kreitzer that developed it, and actually down to the same words. And I hear the same story of my uncle through these other people without giving him credit. So That's another thing too is these people. They sacrificed everything. I mean, they were the real McCoys as far as out in the middle of the desert, in their lives during the time where they really got the hammer for coming out. And that's been another driving force behind me wanting to especially do the movie, because they should be acknowledged, because, they literally were light years ahead of everyone, and they were like getting pounded in the ground for coming out and mentioning it, which I think is so typical of this, linear world that we live in. Anything that's of extreme value seems to get, shouted out or booed out really quick. So if you go on the internet, you can listen to some of my uncle's interviews, George Van Tassel, that he had done. And one thing, some people try to make kind of a joke out of it, and et cetera, what he's trying to make him look like the clown and all that stuff. But, he just stood his ground, and I love that. And he didn't get upset or anything like that. He just had his message, and it was just so profound. And just as a matter of fact, that, that kind of honesty, brutal honesty, I just love. And so granted, it wasn't in the 70s. And in the 80s, it was not hip to be anything involved with UFOs. So, anyways, but I've always shared my stories with friends, and shared my stories with other abductees. I've never hid that part. I just didn't come out to the public until a few years ago, and I don't care. I've had a lot of good times with some people. With some various radio shows, and I think, hey, skeptics are absolutely welcome.
Yeah,
I mean, they really are.
Yeah. That's the whole weird thing with the skeptics, and it's hard for me to even go down that route with them anymore, because I think they haven't had the encounters that you've had. I think once you've had an experience,
exactly,
that kind of does it. So there's like. They say that you can't recreate the encounters, or you can't recreate the experiences. I think if somebody wants to, I think they're kind of honing in on how to make contact yourself now, like you said, with the channelings or like these prayers and meditation, to actually make contact with these beings, or with these, angels, whatever you want to call them. But it's being done now, and people can actually do it. So I think it's one of the things that if you want to know the truth, as far as even being a skeptic or an atheist for that matter, if you want to know the truth is really out there, and you can have an encounter, right?
Yeah, and that's what happens. That's why I said, and that's what I always tell people. Says, well, how, you're only one encounter away from knowing what I know. Yeah, I said, and so and it's either going to happen or it's not. As far as that, there are things you can do. But I was on Eminem's show with and 50 Cent show, and one of the announcers, he was playing with me, and he goes I want to see a UFO. How do you do it? And I said, well, you just go out the desert. I said, and you get on one leg and you sing and pray, and until one comes by. And he goes, well, what if that doesn't work? I said, well, you change legs. Yeah. So, but it was kind of the gotcha, and I've heard all kinds of stuff, one was, E.T.'s prejudice against black people. And I said, well, Betty Hill. I said, there's been so many encounters. I said, it doesn't really matter as far as that. But anyways, you just kind of, what I do, because I don't, I'm not doing my own radio show and all that stuff. I just kind of just go with the flow and let people, But then what happens is, I think we put a seed in there, okay, and they heard one side, okay, and that's all that need to happen, is to have the seed implanted in your brain, and then the next thing will happen. You're a little bit more open to having one, So.
Yep. With the success of the book, and then trying to make it into a film, obviously, when you go from book to film, there's way much more details. There's way many more stories that you couldn't really add to a film per se, but maybe, like you kind of mentioned, a series, you can kind of get more of that. Are you leaning to, more towards the film being more of a pilot to kind of launch a series behind it, because there's just so much information and stuff that kind of comes with it?
Yeah, I didn't, until the whole Netflix phenomenon. I wasn't really keen on the idea. My whole goal was do a feature film, then maybe do a sequel, and then do a treat, in which I'm still open to. It can go either way. But then Netflix comes out and all this other the streaming stuff. I think, okay, I've got enough stuff for at least 16 episodes right now. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's already done. And there's actually there's a ton more that can come as far as that. But the whole movie world, which I'm kind of in, kind of out. I'm an outsider still, and I'm not buddies with Steven Spielberg or anybody. Incidentally, my uncle was the creative consultant for Close Encounters of the Third Kind, so he actually was in on that too. But I'm not really friends with all the big money and all that. So I'm just kind of like a little fish trying to maneuver all this stuff and present it. Say, hey, listen, would this be a good idea? And then I look at Netflix, and I'm like everyone else. I spend an hour and a half looking for something to watch, and I think this would fit and be of interest to a lot of people. So that's kind of what.
It's kind of weird because you got some that just kind of hit or miss, but the ones that are good are really good, and they can kind of go down as being classics. I mean, there's tons of classic UFO and alien films and movies out there now. What are some of your favorite from the early years? Some of the movies out there that just kind of, when you watch the movie, it's like it just became all too real, and it just kind of goes down as a. Well, I think there's probably two different categories though. Your favorite versus the ones that are real though. Right.
My all-time favorite was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I loved how they did it because that's actually in the timing and the setting as far as with my experiences. Yeah. There was that, but there's been some greats like Contact. I thought that opened up the whole interesting, with Jodie Foster. Fire in the Sky, which I went to the premiere. I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty good. Some of the early 50s were way advanced. In fact, some of the segments like on Twilight Zones there's a lot of really neat television that was actually. It's funny. I would think a lot more. It kind of goes in, it ebbs and flows as far as that whole thing. But what they did, they brought back X-Files, which I thought was really interesting. The thing went off, then it went to a movie. Now they brought it back into a series. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting, But the numbers of people that believe in extraterrestrials or life on other planets, it's grown exponentially. It's a lot more. It used to be we were in such a minority. Now we're slipping the other way. So hopefully, hopefully somebody will pick us up and we'll be able to do it. I've had a couple of close encounters with deals where I've actually had to pass because most of them coincide with my. With me not being involved with the production of it, which will never happen.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that in the past, and now some people who are in the circuit trying to undo that whole work that was done when their story was turned into a film. Now they're out there just trying to undo all the work that was done with the fear and hysteria aspects of it. And but there's a lot of people who have the integrity who kind of walk into we just need the story. We don't need jump scares. We don't need this kind of stuff. We need to make sure that the story's told in its light versus what sells, or like the horror genre is kind of the thing people try to go to. But there's a lot of people who have been approached with their story to kind of to sell it. And they won't because they can't be involved with it. So I think you're doing the right thing as far as wanting to keep the whole.
There's a carrot in there too. I mean, what they want to do is they'll put the carrot. Well, we'll option it off. Well, the other thing too is and I've learned a lot. One thing I've learned a lot. I'm really glad I didn't actually produce it the first year I was out because I had to get a lot of information based. Like what the studios can do if they have a competing product coming out, they'll option your stuff up for $50,000. For 5 years, and meanwhile they're letting all their their shows that are near and dear to them get out there. So that's a game you have to watch everything. Now the smaller creator and producer is really getting a lot better chance simply because of some of the lawsuits. Because what they used to do is they used to take your story or make an assimilation of your story would be almost yours and then tell you but the Disney, they've lost $100 million lawsuits. Warner Brothers has. So it's things have changed. But again, to get get some of the right people with the right cash to say, hey, listen, this has some sort of commercial and monetary possibility. It's a big stretch. It still is a big stretch.
You always see that happen, man, whenever there's a big release about to come out. I remember just going through the video stores was the worst. Before the big film would come out, you would see all these other films that were knockoffs and just thrown together really quick. And that story was that I guess everybody was anticipating was just changed, and people would watch these knockoffs thinking that the big release was already out. Have you noticed that? Like just tons of it. I mean, it still happens now, but we don't get the experience to kind of walk through the video store. But they'll put them on Netflix. You'll see it. You'll think it's the real movie, and like one word will be changed, and the cover looks exactly the same, and all of that. That's weird, right?
Well, it is, and I've seen that, and then they seem to, well, Netflix, they're content providers. I mean, and like I said earlier, I guess the average person, it takes them a half hour to 45 minutes to find something they want to watch on Netflix.
I'm bad about that. Yeah.
But what they do is they're always under pressure to provide content, and so some of the stuff that they put 5 stars up there, which is the other nonsensical lie on Netflix, that you get up there and think, what? I've kind of, I'm here for the long haul, and I'm definitely gonna be thoughtful. I've got legacy issues with this whole thing. In fact, I tell you, I lost a deal, and and really we were actually kind of getting into pretty close to production. We had actually department heads set up, a couple of producers from Warner Brothers that took a keen interest, and he had a dream. And one of the things I knew I was in trouble, and he said, well, I got to change this part of the script. And I go, well, what part do you want to change? He says, well, I want your aunt and uncle to have a fight at the restaurant, and I want your aunt to get in a car and drive away mad, and then I want you to get your uncle in a plane and run her off the road. And I go, that they wouldn't do that. That's an embarrassment. I use another expletive, and oh God, did that cause a ruckus? Anyways, so then they all said, and this is when it got really weird. And I thought, this is really strange. They all said, well, we're going to have a meeting on next Thursday in Hollywood, and we're going to get you, we're going to get you straightened out, or we're not going to proceed. And I thought for a minute, and I go, well, let's not proceed right now, and that was the wrong answer. It really became, that's when the walk-ins started to come up. So I lost that, and I was just so happy to be away from these people. That the other thing too is he wanted to bring, his next door neighbor was, Seinfeld. He wanted to get a part for Seinfeld, which Kramer. Yeah. And I couldn't, and I said, oh God, this is where it's all starting. This is it. And I said, well, I can't see him in that. I can't. I said he's had problems anyways. I just can't see him in that. But this is the part of the whole thing. You talk about power of discernment. It's like, then you think, oh, it's like, oh God. I mean, it's like, this is what's going on here. And so, anyways, it took me about 6 months to get unraveled with those birds, and but this is just a snapshot as far as why you got to maintain your, not only your integrity, your independence, and at least have a say. And that whole creative control, for me, it is worth gazillions, trillions of dollars, so I can shepherd it in. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not open to some really great ideas, but I just want to have the final say so I don't embarrass anybody, including myself. Yeah. But once you sell your screenplay without any kind of creative control, it's over. You're done. You're sitting back as a spectator. So that's another problem as far as why we haven't got the movie done so far. I had a Chinese group said, yeah, I'm going to pay you $500,000 for the screenplay, but we want to do it in Shanghai, and we don't want you involved in it. And I go, well, well, who's your director? He says, well, we don't want to tell you. And I go, well, and so I go, well, how can I determine how this will go? And he says, well, you're not. You'll just take the money. But it was interesting though to talk to. What was very interesting about the conversation, one of the guys who spoke English, I go, why would you be interested in a movie, about UFOs out in the middle of the desert out in California? And he just smiled. He says, people love Western Americana, and and which there is a market for this. There's a market all over the world for this kind of movie with a heart. So I do know it. So hey, I hope it happens. I hope it happens soon. It'd be great. But
definitely
whenever.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, the book has had a lot of success, and anybody who's interested in picking up the book, it's available on Amazon. We have the different websites where the book and the movie is for sale, or the info for the movie as well, if you want to give those links out.
Yeah, and we've got the trailers, which www.giantrockthemovie.com. You can go there and look at the trailer, or you can go anywhere on Google. You just type in Chad C. Meek or Giant Rock the Movie, and of course it's on Amazon. It's in hard book, and people can read the book. I've been told it's a very quick read. People really have enjoyed. I've got some really great feedback on the book. So I'm still excited for people to hear their responses after they read it, because a lot of people, the comments I get is, well, I experienced that, and I experienced that, and I thought, oh, cool. That's what it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good stuff, brother. Man, thanks for coming on, hanging out with me, sharing your story, and we got to do it again, brother. Especially when the film comes out or whatever we're going to do with that. Definitely have you back on.
Absolutely, Derek. Been my pleasure being with you, man.
All right, brother. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Shalom. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Chad Meeks, ladies and gentlemen. Giant Rock, the greatest UFO story never told. Good stuff. Shout out to everybody holding us down in the chat room. We've just been doing these makeshift shows, not even telling people that we're going live. I don't know if I should schedule these more, just so people can plan on joining, or we just do them spur of the moment, because I really try to promote it on the podcast end as well, the iTunes and all that stuff. But for everybody who is watching on YouTube when we go live, you guys can see now at the bottom we have the Patreon feed. So scrolling across the bottom is everybody who has been supporting and partnered with my work on Patreon. So that's there at the bottom. I thought that was a cool touch. I'm going to continue adding people there as they partner with us. And also, when my album comes out, we're going to put the thank yous. We'll have everybody's name in the thank you section as well, because you guys are helping me fund the work that I'm doing there with the music and funding that whole project. So more new music to come very soon. And if you want to partner with me, you can head on over to patreon.com/TruthSeekah and sign up for any level of giving. Any level is fine. All of it is appreciative, whether it's $1, $5, $10, $25. And there's different levels of giving. There's different rewards and things that you can get by supporting as well. Some really cool t-shirts that I just sent out last week that people are starting to get now. Starting to get a bunch of pictures with people wearing their new t-shirts that we designed for the $25 patron level. So just acknowledging everybody in the chat room. Be Easy, Keyblades, which is Michael Basham, Christy, how you doing? Jared, Canal, Hunter, what's up, Hunter Fuse? Canal says, please bring David Icke to the show. I would love to get an interview with David Icke. I was talking to his son. His son is Gareth Icke, and he was supposed to set that up for me because he runs their website. And I did buy some ad space with them a couple months back. He was supposed to get that set up for me, or at least pass the information along. That'd be awesome to get. Haven't had the chance to do that yet, but hopefully soon. Carl Rawson, what's up, my brother? He's watching live too. So yeah, if you're listening to this on the iTunes end, subscribe to the YouTube channel to be notified whenever we go live, so you guys can join as well. We got the chat rooms open, and we also have the phone lines open as well. So we have the ability to take callers if anybody wanted to call in and say hello. Would love to get David Icke on. It's awesome. Yeah, some of the stuff I asked him about some of the names of the people who that they thought were making it up, because there's a lot of disinfo in all of this stuff, in all of it. And I can name you names in every arena that I'm affiliated with or was affiliated with. As far as the religious circles, you know, some of those people who are making it up as they go along. Some of the people who are in ufology, who are just kind of there leeching off of the niche, the spiritual movements, all of it. You're always going to have the good and the bad that goes along with it all. And like we were talking about, the gift of discernment. I think it's a perfect time to harness in on your gift of discernment to understand who's telling the truth and who isn't, who's just making it up, whose story isn't consistent, right? Big shout out to Michael Basham for helping me get on the Fringe Radio Network. I'm now partnered with those brothers over there, him and Johnny Iron with the Iron Show, and most of the people who cover these fringe topics that we talk about here from a Christian perspective, they're all on the fringeradionetwork.com. You guys can go there and subscribe to all the podcasts that they have over there. I think Lynn Marzulli has some stuff over there. Keyblades, definitely check out Michael Basham's show, Spirit Wars, which is awesome and amazing. I think he's going live every day, which is a commitment. So shout out to him. And we get a lot of good feedback from the shows with Michael Basham. So I'll probably have him back on and do some more roundtable discussion as well. So yeah, head on over to the fringeradionetwork.com. They're picking me up and promoting my stuff over there. And it's one big happy family. A lot of cool shows over there. Also, if you guys want to support, but a lot of people can't support financially. Some people aren't working. Some people, just barely getting by, paying bills. Totally understand it. You want to support my channel. You want to support my work, but can't do it financially. First of all, sharing totally helps everything. Like just sharing the podcast, sharing the video, sharing the music, everything that I'm doing, share it on social media helps 100%. I see a lot of it. I do see a lot of it. We get tons of messages in the inbox of people whose lives have been impacted by just simply, coming on here, going live and just keeping it real. Not hiding anything, talking about these feelings, these emotions, these questions and things that we all have, being open with it and not hiding anything. So many people's lives are being changed. I don't even know how, but I know God knows what he's doing. He's definitely using this platform. So if you want to partner with us, man, definitely do that. Another way that you could support is by going to audibletrial.com/TruthSeekah. The link is in the description as well, audibletrial.com/TruthSeekah. If you go there, you can sign up for a free Audible account. And so you get a free audiobook download, and they don't charge you anything. You get one free download, so you can go over there and sign up. You have to use a credit card, but once you sign up, you get your free book, and you can cancel your account. Sign up, get your free book, cancel your account. That's all you do. You will never be charged. So head on over to audibletrial.com/TruthSeekah if you want to support that way as well. And they are affiliates, and they have a great commission. So for you guys going over to do that, it really helps. That's why I'm saying it. Go to audibletrial.com/TruthSeekah. And you don't know what books to get, you're not really interested, check out The Final Quest by Rick Joyner. The Final Quest by Rick Joyner. That's an amazing book. It shows a great picture of the spirit realm from a Christian perspective. It's a revelation that he had while on sabbatical in the mountains, and these pictures that he's seen in these visions, man. You're talking about making something into a movie. That would be amazing. He's visions of these different demonic armies who are fighting against angels and warring over the souls of men. And I know one seems graphic, but he talks about seeing people demonically oppressed and demons flying over humans and demons riding on the backs of humans, controlling them and oppressing them. And it almost sounds like something out of the Lord of the Rings, but from a Christian perspective, and how the battle that's being fought in the spiritual realms. You could download that book. I'm telling you, that's like a must. That book will take your spiritual walk to the next level as far as being able to see in the spirit and how things operate. And I definitely vouch for that one. Another book that I promote definitely is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. That book changed my life. It's changing many people's lives who read it. My friend Drew Gower just lost over 200 pounds. I say just lost. It's been a journey for him, but that book lit a fire within his heart to pursue his dreams. And the person in his dreams wasn't 400 pounds anymore. So that book itself is a magical book that has a lot of allegory and metaphors about our life. And the book is essentially about us when we read it. Much like the Bible, it's not telling the story of these other people, but it's telling our story. And powerful book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. If you're stuck, you feel stagnant, you got dreams that you want to achieve, something that you want to be doing full time, trust me, read The Alchemist, and you can get it for free by going to audibletrial.com/TruthSeekah. Check it out. I love each and every one of you guys. I'll be live again tomorrow. I got another show coming on. Adam Starseed Bay says, "What's up, brother? We'll have to watch this later." Kyle Wizard says, "The Alchemist!" ! Yeah. Make sure y'all go watch the episode or listen to, whatever you prefer, the episode that I did with Adam Starseed Bay. He's a longtime supporter now, and we had him on the show. Amazing episode. A lot of good wisdom in there. And one of the parts that we talked about channeling. And so even today we talked about channeling a little bit. As far as being a skeptic, I'm a skeptic of some of the channeling stuff. And if you go back and listen to that episode, and I may make a snippet of it as well, but go back and listen to the episode I did with Adam Starseed Bay, and there you'll hear me talk about my skepticism about channeling. And I think it was in a good light, though, not in pointing fingers and accusing people, but in a good light of what channeling really is. And this is just something I'm bringing to the table, and I want to do a deeper study and breakdown on it. So make sure you listen to that episode. And so, yeah, Kyle, I love you too, brother. Shout out. Shalom. With that, I'm going to say peace and shalom. We'll holler at y'all later. Peace, peace.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.